Good evening, friends. This is Santa Claus on April 14, 2026, bringing you today's news with a warm heart and hopeful spirit, even as our world faces challenging times. The Strait of Hormuz has become a place of great tension today, as the first full day of the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports unfolds. Several tankers have passed through these waters, including vessels linked to Iran but heading to other ports. President Trump announced this blockade after weekend peace talks in Islamabad sadly failed to reach an agreement. My heart aches for the ordinary people caught in these disputes, as conflict only brings hardship to families on all sides. Meanwhile, our Saudi Arabian friends are urging the United States to return to diplomatic solutions, fearing that blocking the Strait of Hormuz might lead to further disruption of other vital shipping routes. The kingdom has worked hard to redirect their oil exports across the desert to the Red Sea, showing how human ingenuity can find peaceful alternatives even in difficult circumstances. Turning our gaze to the wider implications, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization warns that a prolonged crisis could trigger what they call a global agrifood catastrophe by disrupting fertilizer and energy exports. Remember, my dear friends, that such disruptions always impact our poorest neighbors first and most severely. Let us hold them in our hearts and consider how we might share with those in need. In a concerning development that reminds us how interconnected our global economy has become, Russia appears to be benefiting financially from the Middle East tensions. Their oil revenues are growing substantially as prices rise, a reminder that in conflicts, there are often those who profit while others suffer. How much better would it be if these resources could be directed toward healing our world's wounds instead? Looking across to Asia, North Korea has conducted another missile test from a naval destroyer, with Leader Kim Jong Un personally observing the launch. Such shows of military might only increase tensions in a world that desperately needs peace and cooperation. Let us pray for wisdom among all leaders, that they might seek the well-being of their people through harmony rather than confrontation. In Greenland, former Prime Minister Mute B. Ejed will now serve as Foreign Minister, facing the difficult task of managing diplomatic relations with the United States amid continuing discussions about the territory's future. May he be blessed with wisdom and strength as he works to protect his people's interests. Some encouraging news comes from Canada, where Prime Minister Mark Carney has secured a majority government after electoral victories and political realignments. A stable government can be a blessing to its citizens when it uses its mandate to care for all people, especially those most vulnerable. In Spain, however, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez faces challenges as his wife, Bigona Gomez, has been formally charged with corruption after a lengthy investigation. This reminds us that integrity in leadership is essential and that no one should use positions of influence for personal gain rather than public service. My heart is heavy hearing about a tragedy in Turkey, where 16 people were injured after an ex-student opened fire at a high school before taking his own life. We must wrap these injured students, teachers, and staff in our prayers and redouble our efforts to create communities where young people find hope and purpose rather than despair. In Lebanon, tensions continue as Hezbollah has stated they won't abide by any agreements from the Lebanon-Israel talks happening in the United States. The path to peace is never easy, my friends, but we must never abandon the search for it, believing always that understanding can prevail over division. On a different note, Colombian officials have authorized a plan to control the population of hippos that roam freely in the center of the country, descendants of animals brought there decades ago by Pablo Escobar. This reminds us that our actions can have unexpected consequences long after we're gone, and we must be thoughtful stewards of the natural world. Finally, let me share a heartwarming story that brings joy to this old soul. The world's oldest gorilla, Lady Fadu, celebrated her 69th birthday at the Berlin Zoo. Born in West Africa in 1957, this remarkable gorilla has lived through decades of human history and now has great-great-great-grandchildren. What a beautiful reminder of the wonder of creation and the precious gift of life in all its forms. As we reflect on these stories, let us remember that even in a troubled world, acts of kindness and compassion make all the difference. Whether helping a neighbor, praying for peace, or simply sharing a warm smile with someone who needs it, we each have the power to bring a little more light into the darkness. From my heart to yours, this is Santa Claus, wishing you peace and goodwill until we meet again.